right. What's going on, everybody? Wilson here, your spiritual hype man. And thanks for coming back, listening to it. I'm going to continue, right? I'm going to break these down. So if you're listening to them from number one, this is going to be a continuation of what we were just talking about. I'm trying to make these about 15 minutes each, so that way you can listen to them on the car ride to work or school, wherever you're listening to, and then on the way back if you want to keep hearing more. So this one, I want to talk a little bit about the framework. So I want to just share. I talked a little bit about it in the first one, but really nothing changes until you do comes from years of things that I've wanted to change or things that I have changed and have actually positively affected my life. See, there you go. So now I'm, feeling a little better to understand that. Yeah, years ago, it was fucking rough, like not all the time, but definitely there's some situations that were fucking rough, especially if you were to ask anybody that was close to me or in a relationship with me. There's obviously love from me, but there's also a lot of days where it was probably like dealing with a crazy person, right? So this framework, I would have to say, the way I've been able to conceptualize it has come from the experience, and also sitting with a good buddy of mine. His name is John Ward, and I think there's certain things that we've related to or understood, and then at one point we were working on another project called My 24, which his whole thing was there's only 24 hours in a day, so fucking figure it out. Figure out what you're doing with your 24 hours, because what you're doing with your 24 hours ultimately today over a long period of time is your life. And so I took it from those lessons, or from the way he was putting it out in terms of influence, thoughts, emotions, actions equals outcome. It's really the same thing. Your your thoughts, or your influence when you're born, or your school, adolescence, TV, fill in the blank, whatever your influences are. Those things create thoughts, right? Or they drive your thoughts, right? So if you grow up, with parents that, again, I'll talk about the political bullshit later, but I just say they're, New York Giant fans, or fill in your favorite sports team. You grew up that way, right? So that was your influence. You probably went to like parties or outings where people are just hanging out and they're feeling great. It's community. That creates influence. Those influence then create thoughts. Oh, our team's the best. Your team's not that good. Here's our rivals. Just thoughts from past history. Those thoughts then create actions. You root for your team, you boo the other team, and then those create outcomes. So depending on the type of individual you are, if you go to games and get drunk and you're out of control, you potentially get into a fight or spit on people. And I've seen this before, in terms of sports rivalries and shit like that. And then you get an outcome. You go to jail or whatever the fuck, or you get punched in the eye. Next thing you know, you're like, oh man, whatever. So again, that was an example of influence, thoughts, emotions, actions, outcomes. Influence drives or creates thoughts. Thoughts then drive or create actions. Actions then create your outcome, right? Your next situation really is what it is. And so I've taken that throughout the last few years and just shared it with people, because I think throughout life, life in general, right? So the framework is this: life in general was an accumulation of situations and decisions made over time. That's it. So from the day that you're born to the day that you die, just a bunch of little situations. Every 24 hours, there's a bunch of situations. And in each situation, you're making a decision. That decision then is creating an outcome, and that outcome is your next situation. And then it just leads, right? Leads you to whatever your fucking outcome is, whatever your life is. And so that has been like a level of knowledge and raised consciousness that I continue to use and continue to reference when I am in situations that I do not like the outcome, or I do not like how I feel in those outcomes. And then I reverse engineer, just work backwards to really figure out, okay, so what was my action? Like, what was the situation? What was the thought that was running in my head? What was the emotion that drove the action? And then, what was the action? All right. So a good example for me was I used to drink a lot, and I used to be angry. I used to have a lot of jealousy issues. And so when I would drink, go out to public places, and, you know, whatever was happening in the situation or however I was reading it, I would either fucking blow up in this situation, or I would get home, or on the way home fight with an other individual. And there's been lots of it. Like I feel like there's a certain population that they do the same shit, right? It's like instead of being upset or saying some shit to the dude, they fucking take it out on the girl or the husband or the guy, and they fight and they fucking, you know, put your hands on. Next thing you know, it's domestic violence bullshit and all that bullshit. I've been there. I've done that way too many fucking times. So in this example, I realized a couple things. One, I realized obviously I was hurting people. Especially the people that I say I loved or that I had cared for. The closest person to me is the one that was hurting the most. That's what I realized. And I realized that, I don't want to say late, but I realized it pretty fucking late, right? Like, I realized it with other relationships, but then, like, all of a sudden I'm like, man, like, I came into this level of consciousness where I'm like, fucking A. I'm like, Wilson, do you love this person? I said, yeah. I'm like, okay, so why would you fucking be treating someone you love this way? And that was another vocabulary word, or another thing that you'll hear in the podcast is just points of perspectives. Okay, so there's certain points of perspective throughout our lives that there's these aha moments, and these aha moments will change the trajectory of your life, right? These moments will change the trajectory of your life because they're raised level of awareness, and you're like, oh shit. And then those are your decision points. Okay, so points of perspective, and then you get decision points. And those are the cyclical situations that come back. You either continue doing them, or in the same situation, you're like, wait a minute, this has to be different because of my raised awareness of knowing that, like, if I continue making the same action or decision, then I keep getting the same outcome. And so that's what I realized. So that is, in essence, the framework of nothing changes until you do. Now, it's a lot easier to understand than to put it into practice, okay? But just like with anything, it has to continue to be something that you do on a daily. And that's really what you're asking of yourself, which is what I'm asking of myself, is continue to have, like, consciousness, raised consciousness on a daily, okay? To really be, and it's tough because, like, you know, there's so many fucking factors every day. You wake up, you gotta do laundry, somebody's yelling at you, you know, driving, all these factors that you just have to, in essence, block out or fucking maneuver through. But at the end of the day, it's just really practice the raised, like, level of consciousness that you have. Now, back to my situation, I realized a couple of things. I realized, okay, well, what's my situation? When I go out and we go to public places, especially if there's drinking and alcohol and there's other fucking opposite sex, like in my case, obviously dudes that would either want to talk to my other half or, you know, be the fucking guy. And that's the other problem too, is like I was also the other guy. So for a lot of my relationships, pretty much all of my relationships, up until this relationship, which is my best friend forever and ever, I love her very much, she's my other half, I cheated. I was also a person that, you know, cheated on people because, and here's where I think I felt like growing up, my influence in terms of, like, you know, feeling outcasted and feeling like people didn't want to be with me, or they didn't want to be like my girlfriend or boyfriend, whatever the fuck, right? Like I had none of that. Like no one really wanted to share that with me, right? But here's the other thing. It's like at 16, 13, 14, 15 years old, it's like, what do you really know? It's just like again, your influence of like, oh, this is what's supposed to happen. I should have a girlfriend at 13 years old. We should be holding hands. But is it really? You know? Is it really, like, the best thing for like the species, or like for the human to think that, like, at 13, 14 years old, you got to have a girlfriend? Like, do you really know, like, what that means? You know what I mean? Like, right? Like, most people don't fucking know what that means. That's why, like, you see people getting into relations, having kids, and then fucking divorcing years later, because you yourself as an individual have not yet understood or have a raised level of awareness or consciousness to know who the fuck you are, what you want, and what you want from another half, like another person, right? Like, so that, that obviously is not anybody's fault. It's just how fucking society years ago or whatever the fuck our influences just have us. I don't want to say even programmed, because it's like weird. It is what it is, right? It's like, hey, this is what you're supposed to do. Like long time ago, you had to marry and have kids before the age of 13 or 16. You don't do that anymore, right? But the whole concept of like, hey, you got a girlfriend yet? No? Okay. It's like, what do you fucking have? What do you need a girlfriend or boyfriend for at the age of 13, 14 years old? Like, you guys should just be friends. Like, people should just be friends, having a good time, I don't know, figuring it out. I think figuring out who the fuck they are emotionally, or learning, right? Or learning. All right. So I digress, but I would say, where was I? So for the longest, I cheated on people, right? So I was the other guy. I was the other guy at the end of the bar, or try to hit on fucking another girl, or I know she's got a boyfriend or some fucking shit. Like, I was that guy too. So that was an issue, because when I was on the other side, when I was the boyfriend, then I would just like, I'd be like, I know what the fuck is going on, I know. You can't fucking tell me that I don't know. I'm the other fuck. Yeah, I wouldn't say I was the other person cheating, because I wouldn't admit to it, right? So that was an issue for me. Like, my decisions created sort of my own influence to then become a crazy, jealous individual, because like I wouldn't, if I was already doing it, and I know people were doing it, even the girls were involved in it, then how can I trust myself and some of this, like how can I trust the other person next to me? Right? So it's like, I put myself in these situations that did not help the situation or my influence, my own internal influence. So I realized going out, as I got older and wiser and more, just a level of race consciousness. I'm going to keep repeating these things, because these are the things that I think if we continue to keep them present, we continue to get better at them. I just realized that there's certain things that I need to stay away from. One, cheating, because why would you do that to somebody that you love? And if you want to, and that's what you need sexually, then you need to have an open conversation with the person you say you love and the person you think is going to be there forever, right? So if you have an open conversation and you can have that with somebody and they understand what you need, and maybe, there's shit tons of fucking ways to have sexual encounters within relationships now, whatever the fuck, you just got to figure that out internally with yourself and your partner if they're open to it, right? But you also got to understand it's a progressive thing. So you got to have the conversation, right? And I feel like a lot of couples, I would think that most couples don't. Some couples do, but I feel like the couples that don't, and then there is something there, or there's a need and it doesn't get satisfied, then there's those urges to like go behind people's back, and that then leads to, again, another situation that it's going to be hurtful, right, to people. So have those conversations. I understood that I had to have a conversation. I also understood that we had to have a game plan. So if we would go into a public situation where people are going to be drinking, or just a meeting or whatever the fuck, then before we got into the car, I'd be like, okay, what is the goal that we want here as a couple together? Well, we want to have fun. We want to make sure it's us. You want to make sure that you're feeling love for me and vice versa, and then like nobody else. Okay, if somebody comes up to you, or if somebody tries to XYZ dance with you or whatever the fuck, or buy you a drink, here's the game plan. And so we started doing that like for a good amount of time when we would go out. And so instead of going without a plan, and all of a sudden somebody comes up and all of a sudden everything blows up, and now I'm mad at my other half, like now we've switched it to now we're controlling the situation, where it's like, okay, listen, I would appreciate if someone did come up to you, then you would just like look at me and be like, hey, and I can come in and be like, hey, what's going on? Like, good, it's my other half. Cool. No, we're good. Whatever the game plan is, right? But under control to a certain situation, because there's no need for violence. There's no need to fucking put your hands on other people. You know what I mean? Like, other than protection and stuff like that. But still, like, the reason that you still have to do that for protection means that there's people out there that don't have a raised consciousness or awareness that, like, you don't necessarily need to be physical in order to get your point across, right? So that's it. So I would say for that one, that's the framework plus a little more. There's lots there's lots to continue to figure out, especially if you're in one of these situations. It takes time. You can't beat yourself up physically, and don't beat other people up, especially your other halves, because it's just not right. Like there's better ways to develop your raised level of consciousness. There's better ways to develop your way of communicating with people, especially the people that you say you love, right? So that's the framework. Influence creates thoughts. Thoughts drives actions. Actions are your decisions. Those decisions then create your outcome, which is another situation. And again, you have to figure out what's your influence, thought, emotion, action in that situation, make those decisions, and then get to a better outcome. All right. My name is Wilson. Again, if you're not feeling good today, or if you're not feeling happy, just remember to practice, be conscious of it, and start thinking of the things that will make you happy. Prompt yourself some questions, or even just take 15 minutes to listen to your favorite song or something. Change the thoughts in your head so that way you can change how you feel and then ultimately change the decisions you make. All right. I'll see you guys again next time. Have a great day. Have a great night. And don't forget, nothing changes until you do. Peace.